Hey, it's Cliff, and I've been seeing these articles about Dave Ramsey everywhere. Let me pull one up right now. It says radio host Dave Ramsey insists if his tenants are homeless because they raised rent, it doesn't make him a bad Christian. I've also seen this trending on Twitter. It's kind of big news right now. So I tracked down the video, which is right here, and I figured we could watch it together, and we could both could decide if Dave Ramsey is a douchebag or not. So let me pull the video up.
Today's question comes from Dan in Washington, D.C. I'm a landlord who owns multiple rental properties. Over the past year or two, rent prices have seen a big increase. This is great for a landlord, but not so great for the tenant. I know I need to raise my rental rates to keep up with the increased overhead costs. However, this causes direct hardship to my tenants that have been good tenants for the past few years. As a Christian, this is hard for me. I would feel bad if raising rent caused them to have to move after they've made the house their home. I did not get into real estate to subsidize people's living expenses, but I also didn't get into real estate to displace families either. I love investing in real estate, so I don't see myself exiting this field, so I'd like to hear your advice on how to balance this equation.
It is sweet that you've got a big heart like this, and that's a nice thing. And you're not exiting the landlord field, and so you are going to have to learn to balance your faith with business practices that are not dishonoring to your faith.
I feel like anyone who's sitting in a position like that, they're huddled close, has probably displaced a family who fell on hard times. But we're not going to judge too much. We'll just keep going.
Treat other people like you would want to be treated. Okay? I lease a building for Ramsey Solutions that is an office warehouse. We're not the owner of it. About 5 miles from where we sit right now, from our buildings that we own. And the lease is coming up for renewal. If the guy raises my rent to market rate, why does that make him a bad Christian? That was a passive-aggressive question. Answer is, it doesn't.
So he's already trying to deflect blame, it seems. Dave Ramsey is a multimillionaire. His leasing a building at market rate and having his rent raised is not going to affect him at all. We're talking about a family in a single family home, and they're being kicked out of their home because they can't afford the rent anymore, which is completely different. The fact that he's mixing the two, we're talking about Christian principles. There's definitely a difference between kicking someone out of their home and a multi-millionaire maybe having to lease a different building.
Okay, I own rental property, single-family homes, among many other properties that we own. And if I raise my rent to be market rate, that does not make me a bad Christian. I did not displace the person out of that house if they can no longer afford it. The marketplace did. The economy did. The ratio of the income that they earn to their housing expense displaced them.
So if everyone on your street that owns property decides that they're going to all raise rate and that is the new market rate, they did displace those individuals. And you can be fine with that. I mean, you're looking at it as a business. You want to have the most profitable tenants in your business, and that's okay. But to say that you had nothing to do with the price is just dishonest.
I didn't cause any of that. And so you are not displacing them. You're taking too much credit for what's going on. If they need to move to a...
So he's acknowledging when he says what's going on. I want to bring up some of the figures that I actually found here. So rent prices have increased an average of 8.86% per year since 1980. And as you can see, there is quite the fluctuation of rent as you go back. I don't know anyone who's receiving an annual 8% raise. I just don't. Maybe I'm lower class and I'm just not in the Ramsey clique, but you can definitely see here that when the price of a single family home increases 42% in 1 year and the rent increases 20%, that there is an issue going on that people need to understand. I mean, just look at some of these numbers. Anaheim, California, a 1 bedroom rose 50% year over year. I don't know anybody who's keeping up with those numbers. So to deflect blame is definitely dishonest because you are part of this problem. Now, if you don't care, cool. You're running your business, you want to make money, that's fine. But to make this a Christian issue, to say that it's not your fault, that's definitely a little low in my opinion. And I found a piece from NPR, and it says, still according to the report, a person making $14 an hour would have to work $89 hours a week to cover rent on a modest 1 bedroom home, which is estimated to be $1,615. So from a business point, he's correct. He can raise his rent, and I don't, maybe I don't consider him a bad person. Of course, it definitely depends on the issue, but he's ignoring that there is an issue at hand. And that's the issue I think that most people had, and also comparing it to being a good Christian, which just seems weird in my opinion.
Cheaper house because they can't afford, they're going to move to a lesser house because if they move, they're going to pay market rent.
And this is why I kind of brought up the numbers. He's saying people need to move to a lesser house. But as you can see, when Anaheim's rent increases 50%, nobody can afford these wages. There's a point where these people will have nowhere to go. And that's just the reality of it.
Now, having said all of that, I've had situations, because I manage the properties with a heart and a head, both. I don't personally manage them, but we do. My family does. That someone is sick. I'll just, I remember one time, a long time ago, a lady had cancer. Am I going to evict someone in the middle of chemo? No, I'm not. I'm going to work.
You're a hero. You didn't evict the cancer patient.
With them. I'm going to be kind. I'm going to have clear conversations. I want to know what's really going on. I don't want to be duped by the situation, but on the other hand, I also want to treat other people like I'd want to be treated. That's a biblical mandate.
Could you imagine having cancer and you're going through chemo and you have Dave Ramsey as your landlord in your life trying to get every bit of information with his God complex? You're just trying to survive. I feel bad for that woman.
And so if I were in that situation, how would I want to be treated? Well, I'd love some mercy, some grace. But mercy and grace because rents went up in general, and I can't afford to live here anymore because my job didn't go up as much as the much as the cost of a loaf of bread or a gallon of gasoline went up, because welcome to inflation. This is not something you caused. Now, you didn't cause the cancer either, but that is a temporary thing. This other thing's going to be...
To me, this is kind of like saying, if you push a man off a roof and he dies, it's not your fault. It was gravity's fault. It's questionable.
Be there forever. That family is never going to be able to afford to live there if they can't afford to live there. It's not going to change. Now, if they come in and they go, I'm getting a raise in 4 months, and here's the contract, can you wait then? Yeah, I'll give them a little mercy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But this idea that you have to equate Christian and kindness with not having good marketplace experience is not true.
So his entire argument is that he didn't displace them, the market did. But he's inconsistent in how economics actually work. Now, I've watched quite a bit of Dave Ramsey's show, and I remember a year ago, during COVID time, it was him and Ken Coleman on his show. And they were talking with a guy who had lost his job and he was receiving unemployment. And the advice that they gave this guy is that This guy needed to find work and take any job. It didn't matter if it was lower than the unemployment that he was receiving. He needed to take any job that he could so that he could get his dignity back. Obviously, that's terrible advice, because if we're going off of market rates, like Dave is talking about, to deflect blame, this guy should have not taken those jobs, because at the time, those lower peg jobs were not paying market rates. So what they needed to do was raise their rates to compete with unemployment, to incentivize people want to go back to work. But it seems like when it benefits Dave, that's the only time he's going to mention this.
It's not a factual way of viewing this.
And you brought this up with a caller earlier who was kind of experiencing a similar situation, and you said, hey, this is being a good steward of the asset that you are managing. And, he says in the question that they've made the house their home. It's not their home. It's your home. It'll never be their home as long as they're renting it.
Good point.
And
when you're a renter,
like
you kind of know that.
Yeah.
I've been a renter, and I didn't expect to stay there. I'm passing through. No one that rents, very few people that rent go, I want to be here 50 years. I think I'm just going to stay in your house for 50 years.
No one does that.
This is my forever home. I'm a renter. No one says this.
And honestly,
things that people don't say.
I like taking it situation by situation and going, is this a true hardship, or is it really, you got to tighten up the budget? And so at that point, I may give them some resources, maybe some Ramsey resources to say, hey, here's the total money makeover. I want to help you create.
Look, if I lost my job, or let's say they wanted to raise the rent and I couldn't afford it and we had to move, and this guy gave me the Dave Ramsey total money makeover, I might just punch him right in the gabber. Just being honest. Like, I might just deck him.
Create that margin. I'd love to keep you as a tenant. You've been great.
And how you interact with them in kindness is fine, too. You don't have to be unkind. You don't have to be cold and transactional. You can go, I understand, and it hurts my heart, but I'm doing this with all these things.
I'm going to be kind, but you got to get the heck out of my house. Short notice. You got to move now.
Now, if you've got a property that's gone way up, maybe you stage it up. And that's how you'd want to be treated if you were there.
There's so much inconsistency here, because Dave is the kind of guy that will tell you that if you're not making enough money, you need to go out and get another job. If that job is not providing for you, you need to deliver pizzas. And if delivering pizzas and working 2 jobs doesn't work for you, then you need to eat beans and rice and beans. So clearly he's one-sided when it comes to market economies.
The people like you want to be treated. But if you really would expect to get to live there on rental rates that are 75% of the market forever, just because your landlord's a Christian, then you've got something screwed in your brain. You really do. That's just
nobody's expecting that. We're looking at a situation of a declining economy and stagnant wages, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with those issues right now. Now, I don't necessarily think raising the minimum wage, there's definitely economic impacts that happen with that, and prices increase. I don't have the answer, but for him to deflect blame and force these people out of their home, he's just completely inconsistent.
Not how that is not a calling of the Bible. That is not something Scripture calls us to undercharge because we're Christians. Now, we don't need to overcharge. We don't need to rip people off. We certainly want to tell the truth and those kinds of things. We're not trying to take advantage in some way. But sometimes people get in their head that anybody that sells anything can't be a Christian. I can't believe you don't just give all your stuff away, Ramsey. All these people that work here, 1,100 of them that want payroll, they require that I don't give my stuff away.
So he's bringing up his employees, and that just made me quite curious on how inconsistent he was with how he treats his employees. So I went to Glassdoor, and the first thing that I see here is no remote options. Pay is below market average. So you can see when the market conditions benefit him, that's when he'll bring it up. But when it comes to actually paying his employees a competitive wage, he's not consistent at all. Here's another one. No dental insurance or vision insurance. Expensive health insurance. So when it comes to actually giving people good health care, he's not competitive. Also, no remote work. disregard for public health and COVID-19 safety. Okay, so you can see he's definitely inconsistent there. Several developers, including myself, doubled or tripled their salary when they left. They don't pay market value to most developers. Again, he's not paying market rate. And just, if you have some time, you can hit up Glassdoor and just see how terrible this company is to work for. I actually saw some in here that people had to attend therapy just to get over how they're treated. Basically, they run this like a cult. So if you want to get some interesting reading in, definitely go ahead and check this out. But oh, this is a good one. The promises of pay and a great place to work, but $27K is not competitive once you have exhausted so much energy in a marketing position. With the taxes that have gone up not that long ago, this kind of pay can be just as demeaning. If management even got a sniff of concern over pay, it was as though they were put on watch. The team that I was on was all right, but one particular team member let it out. She was having family help out with $450 more a month. You do the math in a year. Why? Because she was paid so low. So, yeah. So when it comes to defending yourself with market rates, I just want to point out that it is a two-way street, and we need to be consistent in how we care about prices that we're charging, as well as the money that we're earning. So now I don't necessarily think he's a bad Christian for raising rent. I think there's points that rent does need to be increased. It's just the callous way that he does it. And I don't know if he just does this for media attention or what, or maybe he just doesn't care about people. After reading some of the things about how he was treating people during COVID, or just inconsistencies of how it's ran as a Christian organization, but he allowed one of his employees to sleep with people in the office while firing a pregnant woman, and just there's a lot of craziness going on. So let me know what you think down below, and I will see you next video.